And good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a nice day, even though it's kind of cloudy and not that exciting outside. But I'm sure everyone's got plenty of stuff going on, getting ready for the holidays coming up. And somehow, in less than 2 weeks, I don't know where this year has flown by. But I am able to be joined today by Elisa. She is the founder and CEO of the Co-work Experience. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So why don't you kind of start us off with a little bit, kind of like your origin story, what kind of got you into wanting to start your own business, just kind of some background that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much I was in corporate, I'd say, for about over 15 years. And during that time, I had thoughts. Let's just say I had thoughts. I'd been wanting to explore things. I came from an entrepreneurial family. You know, they were Mexican-American immigrants, but then they came and they built a business. They built a restaurant line. They got into commercial property. So I was very heavily inspired by them. But I grew up in this type of mold where it's like the ideal was to go to college, get a full-time job in corporate, and just drive on into the sunset, right? However, as I was nearing a certain age, I felt like there was a lot of things in my life that I still hadn't accomplished, one of that being, married with kids. And I feel like it's very important in terms of like my story in my life. And it just so happens right around that time, I had a pretty invasive eye surgery where I had a retinal detachment. And the reason why I bring this up is because this was the catalyst that made me realize like I need to do something different. And so when I went through this really emotional, traumatic experience, I decided to travel and work and travel at the same time. But I soon ended up quitting because I was like, what would I do different in life if I didn't end up getting what I had hoped or I was expecting to get this entire time? And I was like, well, I would create my own business, right? I would do something that I would truly enjoy. And that's when I started exploring and I started traveling. And I was far away enough from the US to be able to explore the sense of producing events again, which when I was back in corporate in the US, like for me, producing events at the time or just doing anything related to events was more of a personal thing. And sometimes I would do it for clients, but it just wasn't seen as something that was seen as a full-time line of work, right? When I started doing events in Southeast Asia for digital nomads, that's when I realized, wait a minute, I can make this into a business. I can do something more with this. And that's when this whole idea of becoming my own entrepreneur, my own business, really came to fruition. And that's when I realized that, I can do this for myself, and I don't have to follow any other people's rules or templates that everyone else is supposed to do. So
very nice. It's not uncommon to kind of hear that story of like immigrant parents, working hard, and then again, education is definitely the way for most people to kind of get to a better place in life. However, I think in the last 20, 30 years, we're understanding that it's not maybe the traditional education way of, hey, go get educated, go find a job that you can work at for the next 50 years of your life, retire with a pension and those kind of things. Like that part of it isn't there anymore. And so, being able to kind of take that detour, and for you, which it's not, again, also that uncommon for a lot of people where it's kind of a very stark event. Hopefully for most people it's not traumatic physical ailment kind of situation, but hey, I need to make a change. Like this isn't how I want to, this isn't what I want to be doing for the next 10, 15, 40 years or whatever that may be. And I also don't want to live with the regret of why didn't I try this? Hopefully is a big motivating factor for a lot of people. I mean, sometimes it's not enough to get people off the fence, but it's one of those things that looking back, it's nice to not have that, even if the business hadn't been successful, to not have that regret of, oh, I should have tried.
Right. And what's really interesting is that when I, myself, and I'm sure many other people, when you come from immigrant parents, they view success as in getting that college education, getting that corporate job, because that's not what it's like in their countries. So I really had to battle a couple of cultural barriers in that sense, right? And in the generation that I'm in, it still resonates, like having that full-time job up until like you retire, that's what you do. And it just so happens that I'm in this, I think it's exennial generation, where I was part of this, the older generation, but also part of the newer generation of computers and the interwebs and the social medias, where I was able to see a lot of self-made business owners doing things on their own based on the information that they were able to access. So,
I mean, similarly, right? I am old enough to where the majority of my schooling was pre-internet, and so like you didn't necessarily have, there's so many opportunities to create your own small business that when I first was going to school wouldn't have been an option at all, because they kind of were created as the internet came into more maturity. I mean, even the early stages of the internet, it was just basically a faster, quicker way to go get an encyclopedia instead of like an actual way to have a job and a career. It's also interesting, you mentioned kind of, again, that coming from immigrant parents, like, I think for a lot of people, whether you're immigrant or not, like that mindset of like, the goal or the ideal is to somehow be different and build upon what someone already has, right? So again, for a lot of immigrants especially, and for a lot of people, right, if you didn't go to college, getting that college degree is kind of seen as the gold standard kind of thing, right? For a lot of, I think nowadays, for a lot of millennials, because they get married a lot later in life, being married is kind of that gold standard for different things. And so but everyone really kind of has to choose their own path and realize that there isn't by any means one right way to do things. And especially now, again, even 20 years ago, when there was there were fewer ways, there still wasn't necessarily one right way. But now that there's thousands of different ways that you could kind of traverse your journey, there's definitely not a right way that it has to be done.
It's funny that we are talking about this, because one of my friends, we were with his family, right, and he was asking me, he's like, because I think there were the younger kids, his kids were really questioning about having a college degree, and they had been following my story right online, and so they were like, yes, we kind of want to be like Elisa in some ways. And he just kind of gives me this look like, but you still need a college degree, right? And so, to be as honest as I could, but be also conscious of who the audience was, I was like, well, I know for my generation that was certainly still a requirement in order to feel like you've gained some kind of success. And I still feel like the generation even after me, it's a transitional generation where not everyone has to go to a formal college. I don't think they can still do things online, but it's still, there's still a weight to it, right?
For sure. That and it's hard. Again, it's hard for people to change their minds on stuff, right? So for people even like our age who grew up where college was kind of the best way to go, it's hard to think of like college not being the best way to go. But again, depending on what someone wants to do with their life, it may not be. And with the rising costs of college too, like that's a whole nother scenario that wasn't quite as crazy at least when I went to college. It was not that it was cheap, but it definitely wasn't as ridiculous as it can be today in that regard. When you mentioned your family coming from Mexico, have you guys lived in Austin then most of your life, or was Austin kind of a later career for you too?
It was a later career for me. So actually my folks, they came from Mexico, right? My mom, they had a little stint in Austin for a little while. Then they came to Houston, and then I ended up bouncing back over to Austin pretty much at the beginning of my college career. That's where I was like, I'm a UT Longhorn fan. And so I was like, where do I go? I'm like, yeah, Austin just felt the right place to come back to. And so that's where I ended up for most of my professional career.
Very nice. So when you first started traveling, was that traveling but doing a corporate job at that point in time, or was that, living abroad, or was that immediately going into starting your company with the corporate events?
So there was two types of traveling that was happening for me. So when I was in corporate, I was a consultant, right? So I did have to travel domestically within the US to visit clients. But then that took a toll on me, and I quickly realized that was not ideal, right? But so then I started working from home for a short period of time, and that's when the whole eye thing happened. And that therefore I was like, well, let me see if I can travel and work from home in a different country, which worked. But that soon shed a major contrast of what I was really looking for,
Sure.
even when I was able to work from home for a corporate job in Italy, I say, for instance. So.
And like I say, at the time you thought you at least took the chances that, oh, maybe this is how I want to do it, but you're able to,
Right.
but had you not taken that leap, you wouldn't have realized, no, this isn't what I want to do. So even though it wasn't, what you would maybe deem a success, is like, oh, this, really was what you wanted to do, it at least checked that off the box.
Right.
And kind of got you, again, helps that momentum to get you to where you kind of going from that standpoint. It's interesting you mentioned about the travel kind of stuff. So as a realtor, I get to work with clients, a lot of whom in the tech space here do travel quite a bit. And it's so funny to me that the people that travel the most for work are generally the people that don't want to leave their home when they're not having to travel for work. They have all these 100%. Airline miles and hotel points, and they can get anything on a weekend for free. And they're like, just leave me at home on my couch, in my bed. I don't want to get near an airport.
It's funny that you say that, because after my consulting career, when I would hear people saying that they had 200,000 miles, 300,000 miles, I actually would feel sad for them, because I knew what the sacrifice was to get that.
Yeah.
And the exact same thing happened to me. I had so many miles, and the last thing I want to do was travel anymore. So I understand 100%.
So you've been traveling a little bit now. You've been living outside the country, traveling a little bit for your corporate job. What made you kind of focus on the company that you started, Co-working Experience?
So it actually, it's funny. I'm sure this is a lot. This is common for most people, but it was just a little series of events that ended up accumulating into this big decision and big outcomes, right? That it feels like it was calculated, but it feels calculated in hindsight, but it doesn't feel like it during the time. But I was in Bali, right? And I was far, as I was saying, I was far away from the US to start to explore things I really wanted and not feel prejudged by it. And so Lombok, a little tiny island in Indonesia, suffered a really mass grave earthquake. And, one of the things that we thought about doing was creating a fundraiser. I was like, let's do a fundraiser event. Let's try to raise as much money as we can. And it was in that event, I was in charge of bringing a bunch of partners together and really kind of putting the whole organization of it. And I realized, oh, wow, my capacity, my ability to be able to do something like that. And so when we walked away from this event and we got a great turnout, we had about 17,000 in one night. It was a great, we were very happy with the success and how we were able to help the families. But I walked away realizing well, wait, what else could I do, right? What else could I do? And I was very much into the co-work culture, because that's what got me into traveling. I was joining these travel co-work groups where you travel with them for 3 months. They set up a co-work space, they set up an apartment, so you're able to remote work easily, right? And so that's what kind of tuned me into that. And you're amongst a lot of digital nomads at the time. So I thought, well, let me see if I can create a different kind of event, not necessarily just a traditional party, but let me get some beautiful villa, some venue where people can come together to co-work, but just for one day, like a pop-up. And I can bring a bunch of different elements and add an itinerary, so it's very dynamic, and they could have tastings, they could have a massage, they can co-work in this beautiful villa that we all aspire and all inspired to be in, right, one day. And it became such a huge success that was the turning point when I realized that this is something that I could actually offer to teams back in the US. Very nice.
Yeah, so again, it's interesting to hear again some of those little things, and then having oh, this is a cool idea. What were you initially thinking for that first event? Like, what was the goal that you had kind of hoped for that you kind of crushed?
Well, I would say that the goal, so at the time I was like, well, I need to make this worthwhile for the sponsor, right? And so I thought, well, what could I do other than if I can turn these attendees into little marketing users, I'd have them tag the main sponsor, which was the venue at the time, to promote the event. And I knew that because the venue itself was just amazing and beautiful, what's the first thing that everyone does? They want to take out their phone and start taking pictures. And so I thought, all right, if you're going to take a picture and you're going to post it, tag the sponsor, and tag me. 10,000 views later, within a 4 or 5 hour span, I mean, the venue got an amazing amount of inquiries and input on wanting to hear more about like what they did. And it was through that same attention, I started getting online attention from other people. And that was the biggest goal at the time I was trying to hit. But on top of that, it just so happened that I also did a survey with everyone that was there. I said, hey, what do you think about this concept? Do you like it? Would you do it again? Would you recommend it to people? And 9.5 out of 10 people were, I should say really 45 people, said absolutely, this was the most unique, amazing experience ever. It felt exclusive. We've never done this ever before. Can we do this again? And so
when is your next one at that point?
Yeah, exactly. When is my next one? And that's when I realized I was onto something really great.
When was that first event?
So that was, oh my gosh, that was October of 2018, I believe.
Okay.
It was 2018. And so I think what elevated my situation to the next level is that cowork pop-up, which is what I called the event. I had it recorded and I was able to, I had a videographer produce the video of it to have it documented, right? Mm-hmm. And even that video in itself ended up being the product or the item or the object that got Silicon Valley to call me to find out, hey, can you do that for us, for our team offsites? And so that's what just kind of blew things over for me. But it was in 2018 and things were picking up.
So I was gonna say,
up.
I'm sure 2019 was a great year as far as really kind of getting things, getting a bunch of events going, getting those connections with Silicon Valley and other companies. And then obviously, 2020 hits. Obviously it had a dramatic impact. Like what kind of pivot did you and the company make at that
point? Right. So the pandemic hit and I saw the writing on the wall right away. All the event and team offsite requests came to complete halt. And it was actually quite personally devastating to me. I think in an emotional sense, because I thought, wait a minute, this whole time I finally figured out what is it I wanted, finally have the confidence to really do this and really make something out of it. And now the pandemic has completely put a full stop to it. And I had to just sit with that. While I had to sit with that though, that gave me the opportunity to explore online events. And so I started producing online events for clients who were producing like say a course series or say like an event series. And so that gave me a different whole nother opportunity to pivot toward that.
And so how long did it take you to kind of make that pivot? Because again, right, like as a business owner, the great thing is you're your own boss, kind of, the decisions are in your hands. The downside is the decisions are your own hands. There isn't someone you can look up to say, hey, what are we going to do in this situation? So was it just be out of obviously necessity, a pretty quick pivot in that regard, or? Yeah,
it was more so because like I was a starting entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. I had already gone 1.5 years, 2 years traveling, having quit my job, and I had already planned on, okay, this is it. I'm going to start picking up. And then the pandemic said, no, we're really going to slow this down for you. And so I think the pandemic hit really February of 2020. And I didn't actually start getting fully on into online events until September, October of 2020. Okay. So I had that additional little time to really kind of think through what I was going to do and how I was going to pivot. And it just so happens that now I'm still doing that, but online wellness programs for teams as well. So now it's only added to my suite of products, which is the online and the live experiences.
Sure. Have you had any of the live events since the pandemic?
Oh yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. Clients came back and they came back with a ferocity.
People were ready. People were ready to travel.
They were ready. Yeah. And I think it was this year actually started calling me around beginning of the summer. And they said, all right, let's start making plans, but let's plan cautiously in case things change. Sure. And so since then it's just been an uptick, and now we're doing online wellness programs. We're doing webinar series for teams that are looking to do business development, as well as marketing events, as well as team offsites, live team offsites as well. So that's about it.
Have you had any events where it's kind of been a mix of the two, or has it usually kind of been one or the other?
Yeah, it's usually one or the other. And if I put into three buckets, because technically, so my main two focuses is team offsites, right? That's within the team company. Mm-hmm. And then there's the online wellness program that's also within the company. It's to treat burnout and to treat personal growth, what have you. But then you've got these other events, which is the marketing events, which is, the webinars and what have you, or panel events. Those are for marketing, and that's like outside of the team. So kind of going back to your question, oh my gosh, can you repeat your question again?
Oh, just if you've been seen like a mix of them, or they've kind of been in either online or.
Yeah, it's one or the other. Yeah, the only time I've seen a mix is when we've done say at a team offsite or like at a panel event, we might wire in a speaker to speak. And then we have a projector and that.
Sure. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I've been seeing and hearing from other business owners or executives is that because so many companies are either still allowing employees to work from home, or there's kind of coming in a few days a week and stuff, is that it seems like most executives, most managers are kind of either having their own team meetings and stuff, kind of be one or the other, because it seems like it's challenging initially to try to do both, right? Like, the people in person, if you have half the team in person and half the team not, it's just not the same experience for anyone.
No, it's not ideal. So, and I typically work with remote tech companies. And so what they're doing, for instance, they're actually doing both, but not at the same time.
Sure.
Like they'll have an online wellness program to really kind of treat the employees on a daily, on an ongoing maintenance basis, but then they'll have their yearly company-wide offsite, and then they'll have their team-wide, team level offsites too, and that'll be trickled along in the year. So sometimes they do both, but not at the same time.
Yeah, sure. Are you seeing the event spaces? So for the offsite stuff, you mentioned, the first one, the sponsor, which was the event space.
Cowork pop-up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for that pop-up was kind of there. Or how are you seeing those event spaces kind of come back pretty hard? I mean, obviously they were some of the hardest places hit, that and service restaurants.
Yeah.
Are you seeing them kind of rebounding, or is that still been challenging?
They are. Yeah. They're you're talking about the venues, right? The venues themselves. Yeah, they're going through the same thing I'm going through, mm-hmm. where the demand is coming back with a ferocity. No, I can't think of the word. Ferocity, yeah. However, I'll tell you a little insight here, something that even I'm definitely keeping ear to. Being the person on this side, where I'm looking for venues constantly at the team size level and at the company-wide level. Wow, there's a huge market for venues for that, because right now, and I'll just start with the team size offsites. We have team sizes of 10, sometimes 15, sometimes 30, right? Mm-hmm. And they're only looking for a one-day outlet, right? They're not even looking for an overnight stay. And so one of the things we're always looking for is these beautiful, 5,000 square feet homes, something that's really large, that has maybe a pool, a view, or what have you, that we can just rent out just for half a day, mm-hmm. And we bring in catering, we bring in these events, and they're able just to relax and lounge just for the day, because the last thing they want to do is just go to another restaurant or even go to a wedding venue. They want something a little bit more intimate and private. And that's one of the things that I'm consistently seeing in the market, or not in the market, I should say. I don't see much of that, and I really struggle to. And when you go to say a Verbo or some of these peer spaces, it's very limited, but a lot of people aren't targeting corporate.
Aren't catering to that type of event.
And then for the team company-wide offsites, that's another thing too. A lot of them are not looking to go to another hotel. They want to invest, they want to go to campgrounds. They want to go somewhere where it feels like there's still a big, large meeting room, so that they can work during the day and have their cowork pop-up. But by afternoon, by evening, or by the weekend, they can still have that campsite adventures outside when they do. And there's not that many of them. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a huge miss in the market at this point.
Yeah. No, for Austin specifically, it gets challenging because they've kind of cracked down on a lot of the short-term rental kind of stuff, right? So that Airbnb, VRBO kind of thing. And my guess is that there's other cities in the area or in the country that, I know Chicago is another city that has, and so my guess is that there's others that have kind of followed suit, which have make it challenging. Again, it's definitely something where we're seeing, again, just a lot of shift in what someone wants in a home, right? Like now having that dedicated office has become extra important again, or having a second space,
right.
Those kind of things. Having, one of the reasons Austin's doing so well home-wise, on top of being a great place for tech and stuff, is that, people from California or from the East Coast are like, hey, I want to come here so I can have a little bit of a yard, because I don't want to be stuck in a studio apartment if the pandemic hits again, or if we're having to stay at home and everything's closed. And so it'll be interesting to see how real estate continues to shift. I mean, work, office space, even at work, is having to shift from traditional cubicles to maybe a little bit more open space. You're not having to be so close to other people you work with. And again, it turned a lot of even corporate space into kind of co-work space, where you're here Monday, Thursday, someone else is here Tuesday, Friday, and whatnot, to kind of change up how the work experience goes.
Yeah, it's funny because like we, my partner and I, we still are travelers. We're still seasonal settlers. We're still traveling across into other countries like Mexico, Portugal. And even when we come to the US, and it's so funny, but like the biggest thing we always look for is, Wi-Fi connection, 2 proper working desks, an area to work out. And some of these Airbnbs are just not configured for that. And so it's just like such a miss. And one of the things that we plan on doing is when we're getting our real estate, that we actually target remote workers and digital nomads, whether it's in the US and outside. So
no, for sure. Definitely most of that short-term rental stuff has been based around the vacation kind of stuff. So right here in Austin, it's, hey, what's the type of home or space that someone would want to come for F1 weekend or for South by Southwest. Right. And so having office space is not critical to that at all. Having a gym is not critical at all. You just want to maximize bedrooms, kitchen, and a little bit of a living space, because it's just kind of a place. It's a more
I would make mine for corporate.
Yeah. No,
I'm talking corporate.
Oh no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's completely different in that regard, because that's just not what the investors have been, have been focused on, because it's been, the pandemic had such a profound effect on speeding up the time frame of what probably would have happened anyway. I mean, it's something that would have happened eventually, that as we got more and more remote workers, people would have had that opportunity, and it would have been something in 5 years or so. But that what would have happened in 5 years without the pandemic happened in 5 months with the pandemic of being at home and changing kind of the work experience for a lot of companies and employees. There's
a lot of opportunity to really kind of get ahead of these changes if people just pay a little bit more close attention.
So obviously, the real estate space is something that you guys are looking at. What are some of the things you guys are planning for 2022 and beyond?
Well, we're going back to Mexico, more so because we have some business over there, and we're associated with a few wellness retreats. Because by day, yes, I do serve corporate, and I work with corporate clients to help serve their full-time employees, and wellness around that actually too. But we're also doing this for off hours for people that want to seek their own wellness treatments after hours and in their own private time, right? And it just so happens, and in 5 years we have a plan, right, pretty much to come back and to get actually to create a big event venue space, more so for the same clientele that I'm working with today. So funny.
And do you see any kind of changes, happening in that space in the next couple of years? Obviously it's going to be more of what you're seeing now, but is there anything else kind of on the horizon that you're seeing that you think will kind of change those type of events, or even just the kind of work experience for a lot of companies and
I do see a lot more co-work pop-ups and remote co-work camps happening. The co-work, and just to kind of give you a little just a refresh. So the co-work pop-up is, how can we make the co-work day or the work day a bit more dynamic, right? And how do we make it more interesting? And so we take teams off-site to a whole new other venue. They co-work there. We get them all together working in a room, but then we complement it with a bunch of activities and classes and tasting, so it actually feels a bit more leisure co-working, right? And so I see a lot more teams doing that as their team offsites, and doing that more regularly, especially if they are a remote first company.
Nice. And then most of the companies that you're working with, are they larger, like teams within larger companies, or are you seeing it more with smaller kind of startups and companies that way?
Actually, more middle to larger size. Like the team offsites we work with are between, like, it could be 60 to like 200 team members. And it seems like right now the only available space for that is for hotels. Mm-hmm. And the last thing people want to do is be stuck in a big old ballroom. They want something with windows. They want something with a little bit more interaction but then, as I was mentioning earlier, then we have the team level offsites where they just want to go somewhere for like 6 hours and just to bond and have some kind of more of an intimate experience, where they're not going to like some public bowling alley and, sure, and it's just some arcade place. They want to go somewhere where it's like a private, luxurious venue, or a house, I should say, just so that they could be inspired and enjoy. And then they're done by 5 p.m. There's no keg stands, there's no overnight stays. And I'm just like, my God, I need a house like this now so I can rent a team offsites, because that would be that's such a miss.
Well, it sounds like it's kind of a ever-changing event, or ever-changing kind of environment and stuff that way. And so there's, again, probably gonna be a lot of changes for that, again, going forward, and more companies kind of looking at those types of things. Or employees, or individual workers or corporations that are kind of looking to help and trying to organize something like that themselves. What's kind of the best way for them to get in touch with you directly?
All right, definitely my website, thecoworkexperience.com. Okay. I'm available at my email, which is Elisa, ELISA, at thecoworkexperience.com. And can I just mention a couple of tips, in case? Sure. Because it seems like, it's funny, but a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, we need to plan something next month. Can you help us? Yeah. If you're planning on doing any team offsite, no matter the size, well, obviously if it's smaller, it's going to be much easier. But if you're going to do a company-wide team offsite, you want to plan this months and months in advance. Sure. You're going to do yourself and everyone a big favor if you do that. It'll be a lot less stressful.
Great thing is we live in a society where we can get things kind of instantly. The downside is we expect everything to be kind of an instant kind of thing, and unfortunately, it's not always the case. And so,
not always the case.
I've definitely felt your pain there, as far as clients hey, we need to have bought a house last weekend. Well, it's going
to take time.
It takes some time to find the house and be able to get an offer and get it accepted and all that kind of stuff. So
100%.
Planning, it can definitely cannot overstress it too much. The more you plan, the better the experience will be in a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today, Elise, and
thank you.
Look forward to all the changes and events coming your way in 2022.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, everyone. Have a great day.